Hello everyone, it's been more than 2.5 months since my last update. I've been busy offshore at work and I could not prepare any parts for working on during my leave. So for the last 4 weeks I managed to spend some time in the workshop and managed to complete about 39 new components which are in front of you. But first, let me remind you of this assembly that you have seen in the last video. Mainly at that stage, I was focusing on the gear assembly that is responsible of the swing and shift movement. But while making or remaking this part, I had to look after another issue, which brings me to another older part, where specifically the joint that is between the swing arm and the vertical arm of the camera. So my previous design allowed for 30-degree steps between a fully vertical and a fully folded situation. It worked fine, it was very rigid, but I was not happy with the 30-degree steps. Meanwhile, I came to know about these serrated washers that you can buy for video cameras, and it allows much finer steps and a very rigid connection between the two sides. So I wanted to implement a similar design. However, such component is not easy or straightforward to make. I might need a 4-axis CNC machining to do it, or other technique. So I had to come out with a simple and quick proof of concept for this idea. So I came out with a quick draft of my version of the serrated washer that fits into my design. I have a limitation of 30 mm on the thickness of the arms, so I had to maintain that. And I made these two pieces that mesh together, and for now they have 18 degrees for each step, which I intend eventually to make it either 15 or 10 degrees in order to have more steps between completely folded and unfolded positions of the camera arm. Now let's go ahead and put this in place, and I will fast forward through this process. I also made 4 locking knobs for the camera arms to get the full idea of how these will come together. These knobs are still draft design, and I have so many ideas for the final version of these knobs. Moving on to the back assembly of the camera, I had to redo it all again because frankly I didn't get the tolerances right on the first time. I didn't finalize the swing gear assembly design, and these 3 bolts from the inside came out to be very difficult to put together. And also I had to match the same serrated washer design on the back side of the camera. So this is what I came out with. There's so many details into this back assembly design. The gear assembly itself is a completely redesign of the idea. It's not the same as the front assembly, as you will see once I put this together. So let's fast forward through it. Now, this is what I call now a floating gear. And what it does, it's two components, two gears that come together, and only one of them is engaged at the same time. So one gear does swing movement and the other one does shift movement. And you control which movement is engaged by pulling the knob up or pushing it down. The choice I still have to make is which movement should be engaged in up position and which movement is engaged in down position. Currently I am more inclined into having the shift movement to be in the down position because I believe this will be the more used movement. And if you want to engage the swing movement, you can pull the knob up and start moving it. Coming now to another prototype that I made for the swing locking mechanism, which is a bit challenging with the tight space. And the idea is I want to be able to control where the locking knob ends up exactly. And I want it also to be customizable. So I came out with a two-piece lever that come together at different angles, and as a user you get to choose where you want the locking mechanism starts and where you want it to end. And if you're not happy with it, you can easily change the position of the top part of the locking knob and position it where you are more comfortable using it. I still have to make this one a bit longer, but that initial prototype, I would call it a success, and I intend to implement this idea everywhere else in the camera. So this way the swing lock will be also integrated into the swing and shift knob. I also have a few more ideas to also make the shift locking knob close to that area so you can control it all from one location. Specifically for the back assembly, because there isn't any space accessible from the bottom side different to the front assembly, where I have access to the bottom side of the swing arm that I can position the locking knobs, which is not the case for the back side of the camera. So as you can see here, the idea is to be able to use one knob to control two movements. So in down position, the knob controls the shift movement, and in up position, the knob controls the swing movement of the back assembly of the camera. I also get to choose later on how which side the camera moves when I move the knob. So if you move it clockwise, whether it goes left or it goes right. For now, the idea is that when you move the knob clockwise, the back side goes right, which made more sense. And it is actually reversed to the front assembly. I will demonstrate that later on. Now let's fast forward through putting all the back assembly together. Another area where I made some progress this time is mounting plate for the tripod. And I've been putting this on hold for a while, but finally I managed to make the first prototype of this mounting plate. And the design idea here is I should be able to move this mounting plate forward and backwards for two reasons. When the camera is folded, this mounting plate will move all the way back to give space for the lens to remain attached to the front of the camera while in folded position. Once you unfold the camera, you can adjust this plate to put the camera in a better balanced position. So if you have a heavy lens, you can move it forward, or if you have a very light lens and the camera is back heavy, you can move it backwards to cater for the weight distribution differences with different lenses. One issue, unfortunately, that I discovered with this design is that it is not very smooth to move up and down or forward and backwards. It's mainly because I have 4 bolts over there. So I might simplify this design in the next iteration, or work better on the tolerances to make it more smooth in terms of movement. Now, since both front and back arms are in position, I can now test my design for the wide lenses. So the idea here is that with the widest possible lens that I can put on a 4x5, I want to be able to do the maximum swing movement, which I find which was a big limitation in my older camera. Once I have a very short lens or wide lens, I was pretty much limited on how much swing and shift movement that I can make. I still have to retest this again with pillows to see how much actual swing and shift I will get. However, the structure of the camera itself allows for a big amount of shift and swing movement while focusing a very wide lens. Now I get to play with the maximum and minimum focus distance of the camera. And if you want to relate to whatever I'm doing now, each one of the squares of the mat that I have the camera on is exactly 1 inch. So you can roughly get an idea of the maximum focus and minimum focus you can get from the design. And this is the first time I have the camera actually sitting on a tripod. You get now a rough idea of how the camera will look like. I still have so much work to do on the tilt and up and down movement, or rise and fall movement, which hopefully I will manage to do during my next leave rotation. The back side of the camera for now is attached with two magnets. Not sure if I'm gonna stick with the magnets design. Though modern magnets are very strong, but I still can't shake this nervous feeling that there is no actual interlock that keeps the backside from falling if you happen to hit the camera or shake it roughly or anything. I think I favor the idea of having an actual interlock where you put the backside and lock it, and there's no way it can move out. So we'll still see how this goes. One of the questions that I got repeatedly from many comments and from friends who have seen this for real, will you be able to focus with one hand? And the answer is, I think I will be able to focus with one hand once I get all the locking knobs in place. So the rigidity of the camera should allow for one knob to be able to push forward and backwards the whole assembly. Take note also that I did not grease any of these dovetail sliders for the focusing system. Once I have a decent amount of grease there, it should be easier to move forward and backwards. However, should I find it still not very easy, or if at a certain situation the camera gets stuck while focusing with one hand, I still have another design idea that can completely eliminate that concern. But I will only go that way if the problem cannot be solved easily with a bunch of grease. And frankly, that design idea I was talking about is very complicated, and I want to keep the camera as simple as possible, because the more complicated components I introduce, the more expensive it will be to build this camera at a later stage. For now, I will be putting all my efforts for the next 4 weeks on completing the CAD design of the camera. So on my next leave, I will be working on finalizing all the remaining components. That's it for now. Hopefully I will be able to show you a more complete camera in the next video update. And as always, thank you for watching.